Thus it was on a deep night I returned to that forbidden place, urged on by secrets and promises. Welcome. In this tutorial, we'll learn how to use a simple setup to create outlines on our models, then use attributes to drive where those outlines appear. While we're using this to create a particular illustrative style today, these techniques can be applied to many other looks and effects. Creating the outline. We'll use a skull to keep things simple. We'll start by creating two materials. The first serves as our main surface, and the second will be for our outlines. Add a Solidify modifier and set the offset to 1. Enable Flip Normals, then change the material and rim offset from 0 to 1. This tells the modifier to use our outline material, the second slot in our material stack. In our outline material, we'll mix an emission and a transparent BSDF using a mix shader node. We'll then add a geometry info node and use the backfacing output to drive the mix factor. This way, the parts of the shell directly facing the camera become transparent, while the inward-facing polygons on the far side of the model remain visible. These inner faces only peek out around the edges of the silhouette, creating our stroke. Setting up the world. For the environment, we can take a paper texture and connect it to our background node in the World Shader Editor. By using mapping and texture coordinate nodes set to window, we can project the texture based on the 2D coordinates of our screen rather than the 3D coordinates of the world. This creates a static canvas effect that anchors our render to a traditional medium. If we don't want our world to light our scene, we can use the isCameraRay output from a LightPath node to drive another mix shader so that we have a background texture that affects light and one that remains visible but does not contribute to the scene lighting at all. Distance check attribute setup. In this segment, we're building a mask that calculates the orientation of our mesh relative to a specific target. While we're using a light object as our target today, this math works with any object. First, we need to find the direction from our mesh to our target. Add an object info node, select your target, add a position node to get the coordinates of the skull's vertices. By using a vector math subtract node to subtract the position from the location, we get a vector pointing directly from the surface toward the target. We want to know which parts of the mesh are facing that target regardless of distance, so we'll add a vector math normalize node. Then add a vector math dot product node. Plug our normalized direction into one socket and a normal node into the other. The dot product compares these two vectors. If the surface normal and the target vector are perfectly aligned, we get a value of 1. If they face away, we get -1. For more control, add a math subtract node. By subtracting a small value, we push the transition point, allowing the mask to wrap further around the object. Finally, we store this calculation using a store named attribute node. Set the type to float, the domain to point, and give it a memorable name. I've used distance check. Calling the attribute in the shader. Back in the shader editor, we can call this data with an attribute node. Use the attribute to drive the factor of another mix shader. The result is a mesh that reacts dynamically to the position of our light. We can add a color ramp to crush the values if we want the effect to be more distinct. Brushstroke Tools. To add even more character, we can use Brushstroke Tools. In the brush settings, enable masking, set it to material, and choose the skull's base material. In the distribution panel, we can use our distance check attribute as a mask so that the strokes also react to the light's position. Adjust the brush length, width, and density until you achieve the desired look. Outro. As mentioned earlier, this effect doesn't have to be tied to lighting. You can substitute the light with any mesh in the geometry node setup. Here, I've also experimented with using our window-projected paper texture as part of the skull's material, using the attribute to drive the mix. And that's the tutorial. I hope this was useful. If you found a better way to do this or have suggestions for improvement, please let me know. Thanks for watching.